So, good morning everyone.
Good morning.
Unfortunately, we say that up-to-date Judaism is to understand what's going on in the Parsha of the week. We find that the Parsha of the week has two meanings. It means what we can read in the Chumash. It also means what's happening in the world. There's an interesting anecdote in connection with this, that a student who came to us from Sha'ar Golan, a kibbutz of the Hashem HaTza'ir, was son of the secretary of the kibbutz. And he came to try out the yeshiva. Ultimately, after trying out for a period, he decided to stay. He became a great teacher of Torah by now. When he first came, so I asked him, how would you celebrate Shabbos in your kibbutz? So he said, well, they do something. Everyone gets together in the Chadar Ochel after the meal, and they have a session on the Parsha of the week. They kindle the lights, and it's already dark. And then there's a talk on the Parsha of the week. What happened this week in the world? And they discuss the latest news. So I said to him, well, sometimes you can understand better what's going on in the world by looking at what's written in the weekly Parsha. So I say, unfortunately, because in the weekly Parsha, if you turn to it now, we find that we know when the previous Parsha, Hagar, she was given the message when she was pregnant by the angel of Hashem that the baby she was going to bring to this world would be a Peri Adam. He would be a wild beast in a human form. Yado Bakol. He will want to conquer the whole world, to become part of his religion at the end of days. Anyway, you know, she fled from the home of Avram and Sarah because Sarah wouldn't have her in the house. Well, but Sarah was willing to have her in the house, but she afflicted her because she thought Sarah didn't have a child. Leah took over, she took over, as it were, as the mistress of the house. So Sarah, she rebuked her, and she said, you know, I'm still the main wife, I took you in. You know, so she fled. She couldn't stand it anymore. And then the angel told her what was going to happen to this as yet unborn baby. And then what happened later on when Yitzchak was born, then arguments began between Yitzchak and Ishmael shot at him with arrows, saying, I'm just playing a game. But she saw that it's going to be very difficult to assert that Yitzchak is really the full heir to the heritage of Avraham and Sarah, and Yishmael, perhaps he would become, as Avraham hoped, he would become a better person and grow up to recognize that he's not really the firstborn chosen by Hashem, but perhaps he can help. But Sarah saw that if things were going to carry on like this, in the end, Ishmael will claim the whole inheritance. And therefore, she said to Avraham, we have to drive him out, we can't, it's even dangerous, because he's trying to attack Yitzchak. So Avraham was told by Hashem, you've got to listen to Sarah, and he had to take her out into the desert. And then in the desert, the water that they received ran out, and both Hagar and Ishmael were dying of thirst. So then I want you to turn to these verses, which I mentioned here in yesterday's Parsha. You'll find the Jerusalem Bible on page 21, and we'll go from verse 9, where it says, Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had born to Abraham, mocking. So she said to Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be an heir with my son, with Yitzchak. And this matter was very grievous in Abraham's eyes because of his son. So God said to Abraham, let it not be grievous in your sight because of the lad and because of your bondwoman. In all that Sarah has said to you, listen to her voice. For in Yitzchak your seed will be called. He is your true inheritor. And also the son of the bondwoman will I make a nation, because also your seed. Someone rose up early in the morning, took bread and a bottle of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, as well as the child, and he sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba, so as she said, she was in confusion. What was her confusion? After all, as a child she'd been reared, she was daughter of Paro, in the corruption and idolatry of Egypt. But she decided this is not the true path, and she heard of Abraham, and she decided she would prefer to be with Abraham, with Sarah, so she came to help Sarah. And then Sarah, because she said, here I can learn a different lifestyle. And then Sarah suggested that she was barren, couldn't have a child. It should be a case of surrogate motherhood. In other words, she said, you give birth to the child, but I will rear the child. It's true, you're the biological mother, but I will be the spiritual mother. But it didn't work out. Because when he became a teenager and older, so he started arguing with Yitzchak and trying to remove him from the household. So that's why Hashem said, you can't stay in the house. And then in verse 15, there was no water left in the bottle. Then it says, "Vatashleich et hayeled tachat achad hasichim." So I want us to concentrate with these words. So she threw the child under one of the shrubs, and she went and sat down opposite him, a good way off, as it were a shot of the bow and arrow. because Ishmael was one who trained himself to be a top archer. And she said, why did she throw him away a good distance from where she was? She said, let me not see the death of the child. And she sat away from him and lifted up her voice and wept. And then it says, God heard the voice of the lad. It doesn't say God heard her voice. He just listened to the voice of the child, who's still young. Sometimes it's called a lad, a child. And the angel of God called to her out of heaven and said to her, what ails you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. It doesn't say heard your voice, voice of the lad. Arise, lift up the lad and hold him in your hand, for I'll make him a great nation. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the bottle with water and gave the lad to drink. And so she survived and the voice of her. And God was with the lad, and he grew. He dwelt in the wilderness, became an archer, and dwelt in the wilderness of Paran. His mother took him wife out of the land of Egypt, back to her origins. So, I'll read you here a part of the commentary of Rav Hirsch, which you've got in English, on this passage, which explains to us the following riddle of today. The most natural feeling of love that exists in the world, even in the animal world, is maternal love. Even the word rechem, the womb, is connected with the word rachamim, compassion. A woman who has a womb which nurtures a child is the greatest phenomenon of compassion found even in the animal world. Because when even however painful it is, which sometimes makes it very difficult for women to go through the last stages of labour, where they feel it's not worth it to have a child with all this pain. But when the child is born, they regret their thoughts and they're naturally bound up with the baby, and the baby is bound up with them. So this is the highest level of compassion which mothers have for children. So we may wonder, what has happened to this basic, even natural feeling, which is not even part, you can say, of the higher soul and character of the human being, but it pervades so many of the animal world and the birds. What has happened to the enormous cruelty that Muslim mothers, their happiest moments are when their teenage child becomes a suicide bomber, killing themselves and killing innocents. And even until today, when they say they've just returned quite a few of the terrorists who were killed, just returned them to Azad, to the Hamas. And they're received there with jubilation. Each one of them is a hero. And the mothers, they make parties for them. Fantastic. My son or my daughters, goes to even to daughters, they become the greatest people in the world because they killed themselves and killed so many others. Even so many others of their own religion. But, maybe it was a Jew amongst them. Fantastic what they've done. Where does this come from? We can only compare this to what it says in the Chumash of Moloch worship. It's the lowest level of corruption. Moloch worship was part of this to God. And it's returning in our day and is such a destruction of the divine image of the human being, and even of the compassion that exists in the animal world. So in the light of this, I think that the words of Rav Hirsch, even according to the simple meaning, are very significant. We studied the text. He says that Hagar's whole behavior is extremely characteristic and reveals the demerit, the imperfection of the character of Ham. Because even Noach or described his three sons, progenitors of three groups of human beings, and he said, Baruch Hashem, the Semitic people, they were given already a specific role. Semitic comes from Shem, the son of Noach, to keep alive the Noachide code. And that was what was taught in what's called the Yeshiva of Shem and Eva. I mean, they kept the basic principles of civilization, which are contained in the Noachide code, mentioned in Parshat Noach. And he says, Yefet, in the European nations, they might also appreciate Yaft Elokim Yefet, the power of the Creator, when they study more deeply through their aesthetic search and also through the power of their reasoning, to understand that the world is guided by an invisible God, who is the source of all the forces. Yaft Elokim Yefes. Yefes means the concept beauty. It's true, the ethics and even the logic of the best ones amongst the Greek philosophers is based on aesthetics, on harmony, beauty. But it said, but Ham, who showed quite a grotesque form of behavior with regard to putting to shame the honor of his father, so it said, B'cham avi kanal, the Hamitic spirit, or the third branch of the apparent races, although those races in the book of Noach, especially after dispersion, are described becoming intermingled, look carefully, and there the definition of a national group, it's also ethnic, but that's only 1/4 of what decides the nation. It says language, geography, and also culture, apart from ethnic aspects of national groups that make up the 70 nations mentioned in the Book of Noah. But the Hamitic spirit, which was in Egypt, where it's well known, they practiced incest, there's frequent marriages, even in the leading families, with brothers and sisters, and other forms of social and sexual corruption apart from idolatry. So they call it the Hamitic character, which is imperfect. And Hagar tried to separate from it. So after all, she heard about Abraham, and therefore she wanted very much to learn that way of living. So I now continue with Rav Hirsch's comment. A Jewish mother would not have forsaken a child, even if she could do, if all that she could do was to try to pacify him, even only to soothe him for even the millionth part of a second. To go away just as we can't bear seeing the misery is not sympathetic feeling for another, but the cruel egoism of human nature, which is still crude. In truly humane people, the feelings of duty master the strongest emotions, make one forget one's own painful feelings, and give helpful assistance Even you can do no more than give the comfort of being present. Hence, although Hagar also wept, in fact, it does not mention in the introductory verses that the boy wept, only Hagar. But Hashem didn't listen to the loud voice of Hagar. It was not called Hagar, it was called Hana'ah. God listened to the young boy as he was just crying quietly because he was dying of thirst. He heard the voice of the boy for doing nothing out of egoism, but sitting and crying does not penetrate to him in his egoism. And for Hagar was egoism. Further, this is about Tashlech. It says, they threw the child away behind some sichems, behind something that was growing there. Siach is the most general name for growth related. It's quite in different where he falls. Perhaps he falls even amongst thorns, where it would be scratched. And through the carelessness of the mother, unnecessary pain added to the tormenting thirst. All this shows how Hagar completely lost her head when overcome with a worry and behaved towards a child in a manner no Jewish mother would be guilty of. And then it also adds the distance was as long as an average shoot of the arrow. Mitarabe, you say, does not just mean a shot. It means the shooter rather than the shot. The bow is not shot with the means for shooting. But we do find in the Tanakh, Romei Keshet, they're called shooters of the bow. It says shooters of the arrow. So it can mean she retired to a distance as archers do. Just archers walk backwards from the target to the extreme point from which they can still see it. Hagar walked backwards from Ishmael as far as possible to avoid seeing his distress, but still only so far that she could still keep an eye on the place. These were struggling within her, where the love for a child is only given as much consideration as the consideration for herself. Then God says, what does he say in verse 17? That God heard the voice of the Na'ar, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what is with you, Hagar? Don't be afraid. Because God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise and lift up the lad and stretch your hand over him, for I'll make him a great nation. So God already heard your child. Had you put your trust in God, had you not thrown your child there but laid him gently down, had you not left him but had you remained by him as becomes a mother, you already have seen the well. Just where he is the well. First get up, that means the well was just where she had thrown him. The well was right next to the thorns, or next to the siach, the growth. First get up and take the lad again, a strong, never despairing mother, for only as such you're worthy of God's help. Then give him to drink, hold him, support him. Let your hand keep a firm hold on him. Be a strong and firm support and guide him, for I've destined him for a great future. And then it said, in verse 20, that God was with the lad and he grew up, and settled in the wilderness, and became a master of archers. So it means here that she is meant to be a teacher, a trainer of archers, who would have some other occupation also. Now, if we consider, let's say verse 21, Then he dwelt in the desert. His mother took a wife from the land of Egypt. Now, the imprint of participation in the spirit of Abraham is one-sided only, is stamped on the Arab descendants of Ishmael, the Bedouins and others. If you consider already at 70 years of age, Ishmael was withdrawn from Abraham's influence, and the maternal Hamitic influence must thenceforth have been strengthened through his wife. His wife came from Egypt, the ancestress of the Arab people. These Abramite traits, so strongly marked in the Arab nation, must transport us with wonder to the enduring, indestructible force which is innate in a true Abrahamic education. Because what happened? That the Arabs, they still have a concept of hospitality, which is very surprising. At the same time that they can be extremely cruel, a stranger comes, there's an aspect of hospitality in very many Muslim circles, even though if they don't accept their religion, today the fundamental distortion of the Quran has taken over the majority, unfortunately, or perhaps the majority of the leaders and many of the children, the young people, they really can't help themselves. They're too weak. They've been brain contaminated with such terrible values or lack of values. So this is one explanation. Now, which unfortunately we see is taking place today in a manner that didn't exist before. It's such a strong manner. So we say that Masa Votzim under Panim, that Bereshit altogether gives us the seeds of understanding many things that happen to human civilization. And it's a very sad premonition of Islam. But it says in the Chumash also, if you look a bit further, that ultimately Ishmael did teshuvah. It brought in a number of ways, but above all, if you, the first verse of next week's Parsha, and the last words of this week's Parsha, so it says, not this week, another Parsha, Tolba. Go to the end of Hayesara. If I've got to do some Bible, I'll tell you. Return to page 27. There it says, top of the page, I'll read it right in English, that Abraham expired and died the good old age, an old man full of years, and was gathered to his people. And his sons Yitzchak and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron, the son of Tzoar the Hittite, which is before Mamre. And it says, there was Abraham buried, and Sarah his wife. It came to pass after the death of Abraham that God blessed his son Yitzchak, and Yitzchak dwelt by Be'er HaChai Ro'i. Now, we see here that Yitzchak did teshuvah. In other words, Ishmael did teshuvah. Ishmael's claim was that he was the firstborn, and therefore he wanted to have the inheritance from Avraham, and that caused all the trouble. That Avraham was told, you've got to send Ishmael out of the house, because he can't be part of the inheritance of Avraham. I suppose it meant in every respect, also materially, and above all, spiritually and culturally. But here we see that it says Yitzchak and Ishmael buried him. The Ishmael gave first place to Yitzchak. The recognition that Ishmael agreed Yitzchak is considered the real firstborn, because he also needed to be the firstborn to the mother, which happened in a miraculous fashion. And he accepted it, he did teshuvah. And then it says, also connects it, that Yitzchak was blessed Be'er Lachai Ro'i. Be'er Lachai Ro'i was the well for the eternally living one who sees me. Who gave that name to that well? No.
Abraham?
No.
Adam?
No. Who gave that name?
The well? Which one?
It says that Be'er Lachai Ro'i. The
Hagar?
first time Be'er Lachai Ro'i is mentioned. Hagar. Hagar, who was driven away from the house because she was the one who, as it were, encouraged Ishmael to assert that he's the firstborn. Nevertheless, when they were starving from thirst, and she threw Yitzchak one of the bushes called the siach, and she saw, then she see the well right next to where she'd thrown Yitzchak, as we saw now, go more deeply into the text. But first she couldn't find the well. But then Hashem opened her eyes and she saw the well. Because she did pray to God, she should help. So God helped her. She found the well. It saved her life and Ishmael's life in the arid desert of the dying of thirst. And she called the name of that place the well, which demonstrated that there's an eternally living God who sees me. Because he saw her suffering, he saw her son suffering. And then it says straight away, Ve'ele toldot Yishmael ben Avraham, asher yoda Hagar mitzchit shifcha tzara li Avraham. These are described in afterwards, the generations of Ishmael. And then in verse 18 it says, what happened to Ishmael? Shows how Ishmael became very strong. And he had a lot of blessing. And it also mentions all the names of the leaders of the different tribes and groups. And there were 12 tribes, 12 Nisi'im. You look in verse 16. Describes Shnei Masa Nisi'im Umatam. All different groups of Bedouins and peoples, each one Nasi. So it's like we're parallel to the 12 leaders of the tribes later, Ba'am Yisrael. And then it says, and he dwelt in the presence, it's Varpanei Kol Echav Nafal. So, the translation, he dwelt in the presence of all his brethren. But the word Nafal does not mean that he dwelt. What's Nafal mean?
Fall.
He fell. He fell in the presence of all his brothers. And this is the history, the continuation of Yitzchak the son of Avraham. Describes then the continuation. And it's very interesting. Let's just take another note that Yitzchak himself At which point did he meet his future wife? Because then said he took Rivka when he was age 40. What was his first meeting with Rivka? Where was it?
At the well.
At the same well, the well of Hogor. Because in other words, they recognized, because the well itself was a miracle, where previously she looked everywhere and couldn't find any water. All of a sudden she found the water. And therefore, I suppose Yitzchak went to pray there, and he went to Be'er HaChairoi, to that same well, because he thought here Hashem answers prayers. If he answers the prayer of Ishmael and Hagar, maybe he'll also answer my prayer to find a wife. But here in this verse, the Midrash says that there's going to come a time when Yishmael will fall, and then Yitzchak and Yaakov, the future, and those who follow the ways of Yitzchak and Yaakov, they will bring about the fall of Ishmael. They say the fall of that will be Mitzvah Shem, the Mashiach. So note all these connections. But I'm going to go further now in this procedure to tell you something quite remarkable. First, Reb Chaim Vital, you know who he was?
Student of the Vilna Gaon.
No, of the Arizal.
I mean Arizal.
Chaim Volozhin,
Oh, Chaim.
of the Vilna Gaon. Reb Chaim Vital, a few hundred years earlier, he was the exponent. The Arizal did write some things, but most of his teachings were written down in the Sforim of Chaim Vital. So, if you just have a look, it's based also on the Midrash. In the Jerusalem Bible, to turn to Tehillim 124. Someone's got the page already?
121. Sorry, 790.
790.
790, yes. 790. So it says, Shir HaMalot. In Shir HaMalot, they all have to lift ourselves up to a high level when we're in trouble.
Here. That's right.
You want to read the translation?
Amen.
Amen.
Amalot, poem of David, if not for the Lord was with us.
You need tissue?
If not for Hashem who is with us, let Yisrael say, if not for Hashem who is with us, L'kum aleinu Adam. When Adam, it says, men rose against us. The sages say, and that's his, it's already in the Midrash, but developed by Chaim Vital. In the vision of Daniel, where he describes all the empires that persecute the people of Israel, describes them as animals. And then the last vision he has is of a human being. They say the other empires all compared to animals, but Ishmael is compared to a human being, because he's the only one who has a Brit amongst the nations of the world apart from Israel. And also, because Avraham prayed for him, and also in his name is the name of God, just like by the people of Israel, and not in other people's names. So therefore, it says that, but if Hashem wouldn't be with us, when that Yishmael rises against us, because then Yishmael would have swallowed us up alive when the anger was kindled against us. That's how Chaim Vital, Neb Arizal, explains the terrors that will come at the end of days. They want to swallow up Israel alive. And that's exactly what they want to do. Today, the extremists, this distortion of the morality of the Quran, it's got its background in ups and downs by Muhammad himself, who was ambivalent, and by his followers. But in history, it's never, anger has not been kindled against us so strongly when they really want to destroy us physically and spiritually. This one as well as Chaim Beluno, want to get rid of. He says the waters would have overwhelmed us, the streams would have gone over our soul. Then the arrogant waters would have gone over our soul. Blessed is Hashem, who has not given us as a prey to their teeth. Our soul escaped like a bird out of the snare of the fowlers. The snare is broken, and we are escaped. Our help is in the name of Hashem, who made heaven and earth. So, okay, I just want to give you this, it's getting too late. I must give you a chance to ask a couple of questions before I have to go on with this tomorrow. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So the Rav Chaim Vital, the student of the Ari, you said he wrote down all the writings of the Ari. And obviously Ari is quoted a lot by Mishnah Berurah, so he's well quoted in many different places. And then you also have, after him, you have the Baal Shem Tov, but there wasn't, with the students, they did their own writings, Chassidut, but him directly, from what I understand, or what I know, you're wrong, he didn't really write anything down. So it's two kind of Kabbalistic sources, but with the Ari, we have a lot of his writings through a student. And with the Baal Shem Tov, it's all, secondhand, I guess more like secondhand accounts. So does that give more or less credit to one or the other if there's writing, or not so much? Or sources that we could verify, I guess.
You can learn, yes, of course. He did write down some things. There are some things in his writing, but the majority of his teaching was spread by his major disciple, the Maggid of Mezerich, who had 60 disciples. And they spread it, Chassidut, in many different ways. And,
is it more or less credible? Is it?
Well, you're talking about credibility is one matter.
Okay.
You ask how reliable is it?
Yes.
I would say that most of the Hasidic words that were given, spaces given over, were not intended to be taken literally. There were stories, episodes, even legends. Many of the Hasidic groups, even the Nigunim, they took from the peasants and they sanctified. The peasant tunes existed where they were living in order to popularize their teachings, so they adapted them. They adapted them to Pesukim, or to Jewish teachings. And there were some great scholars amongst the disciples of Baal Shem Tov, scholars in the sense who could write very good, thorough commentaries on the Gemara, and many even who dealt with Halacha. But by Chassidus as such, if you talk the unique quality, a bit more unique quality of Chassidus, is the emphasis on moral teachings for the everyman. So there were many things they said in order to teach. Even they took Pesukim that they themselves would interpret according to simple meaning, and they used them for certain moral purpose. You know, they sang the Pesukim also, they Nigunim on them, and they also they used them as pegs to hang on ethical teachings to strengthen faith, to also many, to bring people the emotion of the love of Hashem and the feeling of constant joy in the time of difficulties. So it's a certain line of development. Some of the deepest teachings they found in Hasidus. The same teachings you also find in the disciples of the Gaon of Vilna, who lived actually a generation after the Baal Shem Tov. So this is very simple. And let's say one of the great, I would say, originally non-Hasidic great scholars who became a leader of a branch of Hasidus is the Baal HaTanya. The Baal HaTanya wrote classical halachas for it, which are regularly quoted in the Mishnah Berurah. In those areas where he gave out his Shulchan Aruch, he wrote the Shulchan Aruch, specifically developed from the main Shulchan Aruch, and taking out certain halachot in a very thorough fashion. So, halachically speaking, amongst the Hasidim, the Baal HaTanya was the one whose halachic work was on the same par as parallel halachic works, let's say, Piskei HaGro was of Vilna Gaon's Sefer, which gives his decisions. Okay.
Yasher Koch.
One
Yes,
question.
please.
You spoke of the universal love of all mothers for children.
Yes.
And mothers send their sons and or possibly daughters as terrorists.
As what?
As terrorists to
Yes.
kill Jews. Okay. And then they have parties to celebrate their son's or daughter's death. Is this not proof that hate is a greater emotion than love? Does it not overwhelm that hate and fear is a greater and stronger emotion than the maternal
Depends for
bond?
whom? Depends for whom?
It must be, if that's the result.
We all of us have certain proportion of love and hate inside us. And the purpose of the Torah is to try to overcome feelings of hate. It's not easy for everybody. I mean, they were not easy for every social group, but speaking about wider movements of hatred and movements of love. It's a battle of life, is battle between negative and positive emotions.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
So,
I tell you, but it's coming time for the next year.
Okay.
Don't
It would seem on the surface
Yeah.
that it is stronger when what mothers say they'll be happy if their sons all become terrorists and die in the process. So the maternal bond becomes weaker, perhaps, and hate overcomes. So hate is stronger, is it not?
with these people, but with most.
I'm talking.
But with most, I tell you, if you're speaking about this phenomena, the vast majority of human beings, it's the other way around. You'll find maternal love is a very strong power in nearly all groups of mankind. We just see the present situation of Islam has produced an overpowering of hate over love in those circles. And that is what has to be opposed by all human beings. Got to battle against it. And I think nearly all parts of outside Muslim influences, it's Christian influence, or even the average, many of the average Muslims are they're just passive, they don't really rejoice. So it's a phenomenon which unfortunately has developed in the Islam world in a manner that's a danger for all mankind.
Yes, but at least
Yeah.
in these instances,
Yeah.
it does overpower.
Yes, in those
In
instances.
these
Yeah.
isolated, it's not so isolated perhaps.
Unfortunately.